wonderful event today. Good morning, everybody. I'm really pleased to be with you. I suggest we talk about the power of technology today. So if we look around and kind of observe our surroundings, I think we all can already see that there is a lot that technology makes possible. If we look at healthcare providers, for example, that now can administer more vaccines. If we look at banks that fight off cybersecurity threats while they are happening. Or if we look at utility companies whose clients actually enjoy interacting with them digitally because the customer experience is so good. That's all the power of technology. But there is so much more that can be done. We are basically entering an era of possibilities, as I would call. And the reason we are entering this era of possibilities is because of technologies that have been emerging over the last decades, really. Hybrid cloud, for example, or from machine learning to deep learning to AI. And now, specifically around AI, we are at an inflection point. We're talking about generative AI, or as we at IBM like to call it, we talk about foundation models. Models that have been pre-trained already, that just need to be adapted, which means they can be used within a relatively short time period. While previously we had to use a lot of people to train individual models, now we have models that can be trained very, very fast because they're already pre-trained. And we also had in the past a reality which meant that we had one use case that we wanted to realize from an AI point of view, and that needed one specific model to be trained. Now we have foundation models that actually allow us to run hundreds of use cases with one model. What that means that actually the time to deployment is much, much shorter. We can now use AI at scale. So we're coming from a reality where pretty much every second AI use case never makes it from pilot to production. Now we're in a world where that's gonna change and AI will be used at scale. That's great, right? But there is a couple of things that need to be considered on such a journey, an AI journey for a digital economy like here in Indonesia. What are some of these guardrails that we want to actually, and I think the clicker is not working, if somebody can help me, that would be great. What are some of the guardrails that we need to look at if we want to embark on this AI journey? One is, most of all, it needs to be a secure journey. We from IBM, we ask CEOs around the world, what are they concerned of when they think about using AI in their companies? And the majority of the CEOs, their number one worries was actually data security. The data that is going into AI models, is it secure, right? Another guardrail that we need to look at is actually the ethical use of AI. And we're going to dive a little bit deeper into this, but this is the second biggest worry of CEOs around the world. What about bias? What about drift? What about hallucination? How we can avoid that? So security and ethical guardrails are key. What else? We need to ensure we actually support the digital sovereignty of a digital economy like here in Indonesia. In times when geopolitics sometimes can get a little bit complicated, it's important that we can follow the local regulations, the local law, and can be sovereign in what we're doing. Besides this, it is really important that there are strategic choices that can be made. Choices with regards to the platforms that are being used for AI models that we are running. And most importantly, we need the skills. Again, if we ask CEOs around the world, but also here in ASEAN, what is kind of the big burden for them, the big hurdle for them to use AI at scale, they would say it's their own organization's readiness. It's the availability of talent, it's the availability of skill. And therefore, we believe from an IBM point of view, it's very, very important, and it's a role that the tech industry needs to play very actively in actually building the skills pool, the talent pool in a country like in Indonesia. And specifically in Indonesia, we are partnering with government, with education partners. We have inaugurated early on this year the so-called Hybrid Cloud and AI Academy in Batam. We are working with Campus Merdaka, and it's really great to see the first cohort of students already graduating with credentials in hybrid cloud, in AI, in cybersecurity, and the next cohort already being added. So those are important guardrails that are needed in order to make the maximum use of technologies like AI in the world that we are operating in right now. But what is actually what's actually driving the growth, the digital economy? We're actually estimating that AI specifically will add 16 trillion to the world economy. And the Ministry of Finance here in Indonesia has actually said that technologies like AI, not only AI, but like AI, will add 2.8 trillion to the Indonesian economy by 2040. So how is this all working? What's driving this growth? And there's a couple of dimensions that are important. First of all, the emergence of new business models. Most of the CEOs we talk to basically say they are being disrupted. In their industry, in the company that they are running, there are new players emerging. They need to reinvent business model. So business models reinvention, one big driver for digital transformation and growth. The other one is the shortage of labor, the shortage of skill, and productivity being a key way to overcome this shortage of skill. And again, automation and AI being key drivers for this automation and for this drive of productivity. The third one, and we have seen this quite painfully through the pandemic, is that the supply chains are actually quite vulnerable. And now we also see an emerging trend of supply chains being attacked from a cybersecurity point of view. And we are here in a region, ASEAN, or I would say Asia Pacific at large, that by now is the geographic area that's being most hit by cyber attacks. And while in the past it was mostly financial institutions, banks and insurance companies, etc., now we're looking at the manufacturing industry and we see they are most impacted by cybersecurity threats. So supply chains and their vulnerability are key elements that need to be worked on and need to be transitioned to a more secure state and therefore driving digital growth. Sustainability is another topic that's top of mind. Consumers demand it, employees demand it, stakeholders demand it. So it's something that CEOs need to look at. And while driving productivity often helps also to be more sustainable, there's a lot more that can be done with technology to actually drive sustainability. But maybe let's look at the engine room of digital transformation or the engine room of an AI journey. The basis for an AI journey, in our belief, is a very robust hybrid cloud architecture. What do we mean with hybrid cloud? The world is already hybrid. It's already operating in various public clouds. It's already operating in various on-prem environments. It's hybrid in its nature. Our estimation is that by 2025, that's just 2 years out, right? Half of the workloads that we see across the world and also in this part of the world will be running in the form of SaaS workloads, will be running on various multiple public clouds. Another 25%, a quarter of the workloads out there, will be sitting on private clouds. And the remaining quarter, 25%, will be sitting on traditional on-premise environments or at the edge. In a manufacturing outlet, in a retail branch, etc., etc. That's the hybrid world of the very near future. In order to operate in this world securely and efficiently, it's important that we can actually look at this whole world in its entirety, that we can move workloads around, that we can secure workloads across the various platforms that they're running on, that we have one layer of integration, one layer of observability, flexibility and choice. This is what we mean when we talk about hybrid cloud. So how could that look like? Take this a bit of a target picture, an architectural target that we can embrace. So we have a hybrid cloud environment that basically gives choice in terms of the platform. On it runs containerized software. The containers obviously allowing us to move around as we please. It's important if we have a world in which government entities, government agencies, state-owned enterprises, private enterprises collaborate, that there is a commonality of architecture also when we talk about the data layer. We call it a data fabric. Accessing the data where it sits, where it resides, instead of trying to build big data lakes that reside in one place. And with this we can drive a very integrated way of building workflows that are seamless and that ultimately drive a seamless experience for its users, whether it's employees, whether it's citizens, whether it's consumers. And that also opens up to an ecosystem of players that is open to the world around us. That's the ideal scenario, the ideal architecture in our mind for innovation. So what role does AI play in this? And what's our take on AI? So from an IBM point of view, we believe there is a distinct difference in what we call consumer AI versus enterprise AI. If you want to use AI in a large-scale way in your organization, it needs to fulfill other requirements. Consumer AI would be what we know as ChatGPT and other consumer AI models that are very popular out there and have its right and have its strength from a technological point of view, but the requirements in the enterprise environment are different. We believe that enterprise AI needs to be adapted to the industry an enterprise operates in. It needs to be scalable. As we already discussed, it shouldn't be individual siloed use cases. It should be AI at scale. But it also needs to be accurate. It needs to be trusted. We need to be sure that the outcome is right, because it's the brand or the reputation of an organization using it that's at stake. So we believe in an AI that's multi-model and multi-cloud. What does that mean? So first of all, we believe that AI can be many things. It can be proprietary models like we have in IBM, where we look at the data that actually feeds the model in a very, very thorough manner. We make sure that there is clarity around who owns this data. There's clarity around the lineage of this data, that we know it's in line with regulatory requirements. That would be IBM models. But you also can use open source models. We're collaborating, for example, with Hugging Face to make sure there's a variety of open source models available. And you can build your own models. What's really, really key, and this is the multi-cloud version of it, is not only that we have a choice in models, but that we can also try, test, evaluate, build, deploy these models on any cloud and also on premise. Because we are being told by government agencies, financial institutions, organizations across the world that there are certain circumstances where for regulatory requirements or security requirements, they don't want to transfer massive amounts of data into a cloud to train an AI model that runs only on cloud. So sometimes it needs to be possible to run this on premise, and that's what we cater for, cloud or on premise. How does this fit in the overall architecture that I've tried to quickly show already? So important, a hybrid cloud foundation. It can be an IBM infrastructure, it can be a cloud, AWS, Azure, whatever, you name it. It can be on the edge, right? That's the layer that kind of gets neutralized, I would say, through a Red Hat OpenShift, making sure that everything on top runs as a container. We have an AI and data platform which we call watsonx, which runs on top of that architecture. And obviously we make sure that all our software doesn't only get infused with AI, but as I said, can be moved around freely amongst any platform that exists out there. We work with our own consulting team to make it come alive, but also with many, many partners, local partners, international partners, that make sure that this is not only an architectural principle in theory, but something that can be brought alive here and now. watsonx. I've already mentioned that we have launched a platform earlier this year, around May this year, that's called watsonx, and it's an AI and data platform. It's 3 years of research and development work that went into watsonx, and it has several elements. I'm not going to go in details, but just so you get a bit of an idea. There are 3 elements. The first one is called watsonx.ai. You can think of it like a studio for AI engineers, where they can develop models, test models, fine-tune models, make sure that the models they are actually deploying are living up to the standards that they want them to be. There's watsonx.data. It's basically a data store based on an open lakehouse architecture, making sure we can use all the data wherever it exists, wherever it resides, whatever format it has for our AI models. And it's watsonx.governance. And this is important. It's not just governance in terms of a certain set of principles. Yes, there are principles that feed that governance, but it's actually a toolkit. It's a toolkit to test AI models for its accuracy, for bias, for drift. It's a toolkit that allows us to actually manage the life cycle of an AI model. And yes, also an AI model needs to be managed for its life cycle. So those are the 3 elements of watsonx. There are a couple of products that are based on these models, and I'm also again not going to go into details. For example, watsonx Orchestrate, where it actually helps like a digital labor to offset employees from tiring tasks. We at IBM, we call ourselves a client zero. We use it heavily, for example, in the HR space. Things like transferring an employee from one department to another, making sure there is a salary increase in the right time, in the right amount, posting new jobs, scheduling interviews, all of this can be automated. We already have it automated with watsonx Orchestrate. watsonx Assistant, virtual assistants are around for a while already. Now with generative AI, they obviously can get to a totally different quality and totally different level of consumer and customer experience. And what's an Xcode assistant? One that I actually think is quite exciting, generating code in a hybrid cloud environment. For some of you that might be familiar with the IBM C stack, the mainframe world, we have a use case around code conversion, for example, from COBOL to Java. In a world where we have reinvented the mainframe to be part of a hybrid cloud journey, now we can actually make the code running on mainframe more efficient and more up to date with the new world. Exciting use cases out there, but I would like to use just one example here really, because often when we talk about generative AI, we think about large language models. And large language models are examples of generative AI, of foundation models, but they are not the only example. One that I find quite interesting is a geospatial model that we have developed together with NASA. Basically, it uses all the satellite images that NASA has collected over time and also has in real time, and it allows to use the geospatial model that we have built based on this to integrate ideas and understanding of how the environment around us changes, what are the flood risks that we are exposed to, how is the vegetation actually in a certain area changing, to integrate it in some of the business workflows that are really key for us from a sustainability point of view, but also from a productivity point of view. So key, I think, to understand that generative AI is not only large language model, it's so much more than that. So how do we bring this alive? You might be kind of thinking, yeah, that's, it's theory, it's concepts. How does this come alive? Where to start? We believe in something that we call the garage approach. And in very simple terms, it means coming together from an organization client point of view and an IBM point of view and co-creating AI use cases. It means actually defining what are the most important use cases to go after. It's not about the technology, it's about the business value and where is the biggest leverage to start with. And then in 4 to 6 week sprints, actually coming up with first pilots that can be deployed in a really, really fast fashion. So a garage model, a co-creation approach is important. And I think it's also important that the teams who are doing this are located here in Indonesia. It's not some far-flung subject matter expertise troupe that has to fly in first. It's something that already exists here in Indonesia. I've already shared a couple of use cases that I think are exciting. HR, digital labor, geospatial use cases, for example. I think there is so many more, and this, what you see here, is by far not an exhaustive list. But specifically in the IT space, there is definitely things that are very interesting. I've quickly talked about code generation already. We can use AI to run our IT operations a lot more efficiently. That would be the so-called AI ops use case. But we also, and coming back to the beginning and the requirements to AI, we can use AI to actually up our game on the cyber security space and to recognize a threat, an attack, not just within hours, maybe days, but actually minutes. And that's making a big difference in a world where often it takes nearly a year until we realize something actually happened that compromised our security. So a lot of things that can be done, but I would like to come back to the guardrails, right? When we want to embark on the AI journey, and there's a lot of possibility on how AI can fuel the vision for Indonesia. It's important that we understand a couple of things and also follow a couple of things. The AI journey needs to be secure at its core. Security needs to be designed into the journey. It cannot be an afterthought. That's why it's the first thing that I really want to mention here. We need to have options. We need to have strategic options in terms of platform choice. Local data centers, local cloud providers, whatever fits into the strategy that we have chosen from a sovereignty point of view, it needs to be open and it needs to be flexible. And important is that when we embark on this AI journey, we understand that it's important that AI is trustworthy. It's transparent. Users should know that they are interacting with AI. And it should also be explainable. When an AI model comes up with a certain outcome, we should be able to tell, how did it come up with this outcome? If we follow these guardrails, if we bake this into not only our vision, but our execution, I think we have the great opportunity to enter in this era of possibilities and make use of the power of technology in our hands. So thank you for coming with me on this little journey. I hope it's just the beginning of a journey together. Thank you again for having us and have all a wonderful event today here. Thank you very much.